Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to the Accelerated Health TV and radio show. I'm your host, Sara Banta. I'm a wife, a busy mom of 3, and the founder of the cutting-edge supplement brand, Accelerated Health Products. This podcast is more than just a source of information. It's a community for you and those looking to optimize their health. I release new episodes live every Monday and Tuesdays and an extra bonus one on Thursdays. So please remember to subscribe and add to your playlist so you never miss a show. And join my free group coaching. There is no downside. It's on Telegram. It's not censored, and I get to say anything I want, and you get to answer I get to answer your questions every single day of the week. The details can be found on my website, sarabantahealth.com. Today, I am so excited. We are talking about my favorite mineral, iodine. If you've never listened to me before, that's all I talk about. It's the number one supplement. If I was on a deserted island, that is what I would have with me. And we are talking to the expert, Dr. David Brownstein. He's the author of 15 best-selling books, including The Miracle of Natural Hormones, Overcoming Arthritis, Overcoming Thyroid Disorders, and Iodine, Why You Need It and Why You Can't Live Without It, and many more. Welcome, Dr. Brownstein. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Sarah. And I could live on a desert island with you because I would take iodine as well as my one single thing.
You know, it's so funny as I'm thinking about it. People would think, oh, you need water, right? Well, did you know iodine hydrates the cells? Just a little tidbit before we get going. So, Dr. Brownstein, I know your journey and your path to where you are today in focusing on iodine. I mean, I know you have a lot of things that you focus on, but iodine being the pinnacle. What made you so interested in this amazing mineral?
Well, Sarah, I started off my journey into holistic medicine. Well, let me give you a quick overview. So I didn't start off into a holistic medical. Wanted to be a medical doctor, modeled after my family doctor, but I didn't grow up in a holistic household. We didn't take any vitamins. We didn't eat any. We just ate. I don't know. We just ate. And we went to the doctor when we were sick. We took whatever the doctor told us to take. We didn't question anything. And I never took a vitamin in my life. And so I went to med school. The idea of modeling myself after my family doctor. I used to have a severe case of asthma, multiple trips to the emergency room, and I was sure I was going to die from an asthmatic attack at some point in my life. And so I did a lot of visits to the doctor growing up and liked my family doctor. And so I went to do a family practice residency after medical school, and then was practicing conventional medicine. And it took me about 6 months to develop some unknown anxiety, and I started to lose sleep for an unknown reason. After a couple of nights of lack of sleep and this anxiety that came out of nowhere, I just blurted out to my wife, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. I've been doing it for 6 months on my own. And I was negotiating a buy-in for a partnership, and we had a baby coming in a month or two from that moment. We had $100,000 in student loans. That's all I ever talked about doing. I thought it was my calling in life, which I still think it's my calling in life, the way I'm practicing now. But she said, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. And the short version of the story was that I ended up meeting a chiropractor who before that moment, I never referred to a chiropractor. I never saw one, never knew what they did. I used to tell people they were dangerous and they should stay away from them, even though I didn't know anything about them. And this chiropractor, his name was Dr. Robert Radke. He knew functional biochemistry I didn't know any of it. I was taught biochemistry, but I was taught biochemistry how to pass a test, not how to apply it to a person in front of me. And he knew functional biochemistry, and he was talking about using vitamins and minerals and, natural therapies to treat his patients. And either I came to the conclusion either I didn't know everything there is to know, or perhaps there are other things out there that I wasn't taught. And so he bought me a book, Healing with Nutrition by Jonathan Wright, who's an allopathic physician. And I read that book till late at night. I really read the chapter on heart disease because my father had his first heart attack at age 40, a second heart attack at 42. Over the next 20 years, he developed continual angina, always popping nitroglycerin pills like they were candy. He always had chest pain. He looked terrible. He was on 12 medications at that point in my life for diabetes and heart disease, hypertension, and I was waiting for the phone call that he died at any moment. So from what I learned from Dr. Radke on one dinner night and reading that book, I called my dad in the office the next morning because I really read that book till about 2 or 3 in the morning, went to work the next day. And I felt better about things for some reason because I thought, hey, there's something else out there. Because I realized I wasn't helping my patients. I was just putting them on drugs that weren't treating the underlying cause of their illness. And I'm putting them on more drugs to treat the problems from the first drugs. And the patients weren't getting better. Unless I was giving them an antibiotic to treat an infection, I wasn't treating any underlying cause of the illness with most of these drug therapies. So called my dad in the office. I said, I'm going to check some blood work on you. And I checked his testosterone levels and his thyroid levels. And his testosterone levels were below detectable limits. His thyroid levels were in the reference range, but in the lower part of the reference range. And I put my dad on 2 things. I put him on natural testosterone and natural thyroid hormone. Within 7 days, his 20-year history of angina went away, never returned. Within 30 days, his cholesterol in the 300s on medication fell below 200 without changing any bad habits. His blood work looked much better. More importantly, he went from pale and pasty to pink and healthier looking. He could do things without feeling he's going to have a heart attack. Wasn't short of breath anymore. His weight began adjusting itself without. My dad never changed any of his bad dietary habits. And I saw the changes in my dad, and I said, that's what I want to do in medicine. So I went to the partners in the practice when I was negotiating and buy-in for a partnership. And I said, I'm going to leave. And they said, what's wrong? And I said, I told them about my dad. I said, I want to go do holistic medicine. They said, what's that? And I said, I don't know, but I'm going to have to figure that out. And they said, why don't you do it here? And I said, no, I need an office where the people answering the phones, the file clerks, the nurses, doctors, everybody, we're all on the same page. We're all striving for the same thing. And I am now 30 years later from doing that, and I'm still figuring out what holistic medicine is, but I got a better idea now. And so every patient since my dad has had a full hormonal evaluation, including thyroid, and a full nutritional workup. Every single patient. Doesn't matter what they come in for. They get that as part of their workup. They might get more, but that's what they get. And so early in that practice, I started treating people. You asked me about iodine. I'm in the weeds right now, correct?
Of course, yes.
Okay. So early in my practice, I start checking everyone for thyroid, hormonal, the rest of the hormones, and nutritional, imbalances. And I'm finding that first 10 years of my 30-year holistic medicine career, I got about 75% of my patients on small amounts of natural thyroid hormone. Now, they were feeling better. They were reporting to me they were feeling better. And I was following them up with, exams and history and lab work. And my practice was growing, and I was happy. They were happy. But it was bugging me why so many people needed thyroid hormone to feel good. Like, I didn't think we were designed by our maker to, just because you're getting older, you got to take thyroid hormone. And so I would look at the cofactors that drive thyroid production. How do you make thyroid hormone? That's a functional biochemistry Dr. Radke was talking about that I didn't learn anything about in med school. So when you look at the biochemistry of the thyroid gland and the physiology and how it's used to make hormones, thyroid hormone, you come away with, you need magnesium, you need B vitamins, you need vitamin C, you need selenium, and you need iodine. And so over these 10 years, I would get frustrated with how many people I'm putting on thyroid hormone, and I would try them with these cofactors, and I would try small, medium, large amounts, different forms of things. Nothing worked as well as thyroid hormone. And then about 10 years into that practice, in one of my journals, a doctor had written a letter to the editor saying he developed an iodine loading test. Now, at that point in my career, there was really no good testing for iodine. I live in Michigan, in the, around the Great Lakes, and we're in the Greater Belt of the United States. So the states that border the Great Lakes, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, the four-letter state to myself, starts with a lowercase O. Doesn't deserve the higher case O. Lowercase O. All very low in iodine. And by the way, you can see
Michigan,
the national champions, 2023 reigning national champions. I worked hard for that.
Yeah.
Anyways, I digress.
Congrats.
So I called Dr. Abraham, who developed that iodine loading test. He, immediately becomes interested in me because of where I live. And my practice is in Michigan, and it's known as one of the lowest iodine soil. In the soil, the iodine levels are one of the lowest areas in the entire world, around the Great Lakes of the United States. And if you draw a line down the U.S., it goes right down the central U.S. for low iodine levels. And unfortunately, in today's world, and we'll get into that, the whole country's low in iodine, but that we're lower than the rest of the country. So him and I developed a friendship, Dr. Abraham, and I would fly out to California where he worked, and he had a lab out there. And we went to work in the bench lab, and we would test iodine. We would test different amounts of iodine. We test urine, we test blood, we test saliva. And we started testing my patients, and I would collect samples, and I started reporting on it and writing articles on it. And I found that, 97% of my patients were low in iodine. So Dr. Abraham taught me about different forms of iodine, how different forms of iodine tend to respond to different areas of the body, or different areas of the body preferentially take up different forms of iodine. And that when you use the right kind of iodine, that he told me what I was using the first 10 years was the wrong kind of iodine, which, and now I think I realize that because it wasn't working. Now, in the first 10 years when I use iodine, I use small, medium, large doses. I never found problems with it. I just didn't find people were improving with it. And once I started, using the right kind of iodine, seems to work for me. And then once I put people on iodine, I found that I didn't need 75% of my patients on thyroid hormone. And during the first 10 years, about the average dose of thyroid hormone was 120 milligrams. 75% of them, I'm estimating, were on it. Now I have less than a quarter of my patients on thyroid hormone. The average dose is about 30 milligrams. So it's allowed me to lower how much thyroid hormone I use. It's patients are better in multiple ways from iodine, as you and I will talk about. And, that's where I am today, in year 30 or so of my holistic medical practice.
There's so many reasons our bodies need iodine. And I just read a study that doctors are finally realizing that it's not just menopausal symptoms or, a person's depressed or mood disorders, that maybe it's a thyroid issue. But the problem is most doctors just test TSH and they don't do the full thyroid panel like you're talking about. So we know that it's important for the thyroid and metabolism. Can you talk specifically what it is doing for the thyroid and the metabolism? And then I want to get into all of the other crucial roles that iodine plays in the human body.
So every single cell in the body needs and requires iodine. It's an essential item. We can't manufacture it in the human body. We must get it from our diet in some form, whether you eat it in food or whether you supplement with it, since we can't manufacture it. So the largest source of iodine in the planet is in the oceans, but it's very low concentration in the oceans. It's dwarfed out by all the water. So in whoever brought forth this world, has created a pretty cool mechanism for the human body to absorb iodine or be able to utilize iodine and move it from low concentration areas of the human body into higher concentration areas. And it's done the same thing in the oceans. So the sea vegetables and the sea animals can concentrate iodine against a gradient just like we can. So sea vegetables and sea animals have higher iodine concentrations than what's in the ocean, just as we have higher iodine concentrations in our thyroid and our ovaries and our uterus and our breast than what's in the bloodstream. So, iodine's are such an important item that we have these intricate mechanisms to be able to get iodine out of our food and to be able to concentrate it. So, I'm in the weeds again. You got to give me your question. I'm sorry. Give me your question.
So what is it actually doing for the thyroid and for the cellular health? And something that is really interesting to me and that I focus on is helping people detox, right? And you've got the cells that are overstuffed with all of these toxins and radiation and the linoleic acid, the processed foods and all of this stuff. But the cell membrane has an iodine value. And what people don't understand is that you need iodine in the body to be a part of that cell membrane to let the nutrients in the cell and the toxins out. So maybe you can explain that a little bit.
So first off, iodine's in every cell of the body, all of them. So, it's that important of a nutrient. And iodine's concentrated in the glandular tissue. The glandular tissue consists of the thyroid, ovaries, uterus, breast, prostate, pancreas, salivary glands. And we have this, I call it the iodine deficiency continuum, where if I call this you have normal iodine levels in your body, or you have enough iodine levels in your body that the glands have enough iodine, they maintain a normal architecture. What's a normal architecture? Normal. It's what it should be. It's the size of the thyroid gland, the shape of the thyroid gland. There's nothing abnormal about it. Same goes for the ovaries, uterus, breast, prostate, pancreas, and salivary glands. And in iodine deficiency, the first thing that starts happening in these tissues is you get cysts. So if it goes on longer, the cysts become hard and nodular. If it goes on longer, if you take a biopsy of it, they take a hyperplastic appearance, which under a microscope is a precursor to cancer. And cancer is the end of that continuum. Now, this has been shown in animal test tube in humans. And what's also been shown is that iodine's been able to halt and reverse that progression no matter where it catches it, including at the end here. Mm-hmm. So the thyroid gland, let's just pick the thyroid up, since it's the highest concentration of iodine in the body. It's not the highest amount of iodine. The highest amount of iodine is in the fat and the muscles of the body. But the thyroid gland has the highest concentration. At saturation, the thyroid gland can hold 50 milligrams of iodine. Thyroid gland's in the lower part of the neck. Weighs 1.2 ounces, produces a teaspoon of thyroid hormone for a whole year. Not very big, but 50 milligrams here, you can hold over a gram in the fat and muscle areas of the body. So relatively speaking, the thyroid doesn't have that much iodine, but it's needed there. And the body has set up this mechanism to be able to concentrate it there. So the mechanism is that there's a taxi cab called the sodium iodine symporter that sits on the edge of the cell of the thyroid and waits for iodine to come into play. And when iodine gets in that taxi cab, it moves it into the thyroid gland in an energy-dependent process. So you utilize an energy molecule, ATP, and you utilize 2 sodium molecules to do that. You need 2 sodium molecules to fuel that car ride. So it's such an important process. Our body's willing to give up an energy molecule, which are, they're not that abundant, to move iodine from a low concentration area like the blood into the high concentration area of the thyroid. The same mechanism has been shown in the breast and the ovaries. It hasn't been, at least I haven't seen the studies with it, but I believe it's the same mechanism for all the glands of the body, even though they haven't shown as much research with that. But the problem that we're seeing of late in our country is glandular problems. Mm-hmm. We have 1 in 7 women with breast cancer across the United States. So we have 1 in 7 adult women. I mean, you got to think about those numbers. Think when you're around 6 other women, you or me around 7 other women, one of them, by statistical calculations, probably has breast cancer. We have 1 in 3 older adult men with prostate cancer. The fastest growing cancer in the United States is thyroid cancer. We have ovarian, uterine cancer, epidemic rates rising, pancreatic cancer. When I was in my training 30 years ago in the hospitals, people I saw get pancreatic cancer were alcoholics, old, or maybe they had other cancers, or they were just old and sick, or, I didn't see 40-year-olds with pancreatic cancer. I didn't see 18-year-old girls getting diagnosed with breast cancer. This is what I'm seeing now. I didn't see thyroid cancer, on just a routine basis, weekly basis in my practice like I am now. So it's been my premise for, once I learned about iodine, that iodine deficiency is driving this continuum and driving this glandular problem we're all suffering from right now. And
well, Dr. Brownstein, I mean, I just read a study about the rates of cancer in the 20-year-old to 30-year-old population has skyrocketed significantly. And you mentioned that in your study, or back in the day, 97% of your patients were iodine deficient. Now, I know that was in the goiter belt. It was in Michigan, but it's only obvious that the iodine supply in our soils has decreased, right? And the threats of the things that are kicking the iodine out of the body have increased. So what would you guess is the amount of people that are iodine deficient today at risk of all of these diseases?
So the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, which is collected by the U.S. government every 8 to 10 years, looking at a variety of vitamin and mineral levels and toxic item levels. And they report these numbers. And from 1970 to 2000 and it was like 12 or 13 was the last time they reported these numbers on iodine. Iodine levels have fallen 50% across the U.S. And the average person in the U.S. is below the RDA for iodine. Now, the RDA for iodine was set up in the 1920s in Michigan and lowercase Ohio, because they were, as the country was expanding from, in that time period in the 1920s, as the country was expanding from east to west, people were migrating across the country to find a place and make a home. The population was exploding through where I live now, the Midwest. And there was a goiter epidemic, and goiter means swollen thyroid. Thyroid sits here in the lower part of the neck. And, some people you can see it sticking out, and others you got to palpate it. And, but there was a goiter epidemic in people, and this reached the highest levels of the U.S. government at that time. And the reason it reached the highest levels of the U.S. government, I don't really think it was the goiter problem in people, because, the U.S. government, I don't know how much they care about their people. Certainly these days, they don't seem to care much about their people. But there was concern because the animals were having thyroid problems, the farm animals. And the farm animals were not procreating and growing to the right size, procreating correctly and growing to the right size. And there was a worry that the highest levels of our government that our food supply, the population growth was going to outstrip the food supply if we didn't figure out what was happening to the farm animals. So there was a doctor in Ohio. His name was, oh my God, I should know his name. It's in my book. I can't call him. He was a doctor in Ohio. He went to Case Western, and he, I can see his name. I just can't say it. He wrote a paper on iodine in medical school, and somehow it reached the levels of our U.S. government, and they called upon him to do research on farm animals to figure out what's the minimal amount of iodine you can put in the feed of farm animals to prevent thyroid problems and procreation problems, and they can grow, and growth problems, so they can grow to the right size. So he put varying amounts of feed in different animal feed, and he found the smallest amount of iodine that seemed to correct the problem. He estimated from the weight of the animals to the weight of people, and they came up with, I think it was 75 micrograms per gram of salt is the best way to get this amount of iodine in the body. And they came up with iodized salt as the most efficient way on a population basis to correct this iodine deficiency epidemic that was occurring. The worry was in the Midwest, but it was occurring, across the United States, because I have a map of this. But it was concentrated in the Midwest, and worse in the Midwest. So in the mid to late 1920s, he did two studies, one in Michigan and one in Ohio, and found same thing, that goiter rates in teenage girls declined a huge percentage once they put iodized salt, once they put them on iodine. And they quickly recommended iodized salt for the rest of the country. And it was hailed as the first public health miracle because the goiter epidemic did improve. And goiter, it didn't go away from everybody, but it went away enough. And the animal problem resolved as well. So it's still, the only thing I learned in medical school about iodine was that there was a goiter epidemic and iodized salt cured it. There's enough iodine and salt, and that was the end of this. You don't need no one needs to take iodine. That was it. That's pretty much all I learned. So, the RDA was set in the 1920s for the minimum amount of iodine needed to prevent goiter in the vast majority of people. It was never set up for the optimal amount of iodine for the optimal health of people. Now, back then, and as you mentioned, there's some agents in our environment that compete with iodine. So back then, we didn't have too many exposures to those things like we do now. So the agents I'm assuming you were referring to, are the halides. Mm-hmm. So if we recall from high school chemistry, or if you had chemistry in college, the periodic table, on the right side of the periodic table is group 17, the halides. And the halides are in order of their size, from small to largest size. And the halides are a group of elements that are similar size, similar shape, and they can competitively inhibit one another in the human body. So there are four major halides: fluoride, chloride, bromide, and iodine in order. So what's happened over 100 years since the RDA for iodine was put into play was that, number one, our iodine levels have fallen 50% across the U.S. And number two, our exposure to these toxic halides, of those four halides, two are toxic, not essential for our body, and two are essential. We can't live without them. The two toxic halides are bromide and fluoride. Now, we can argue fluoride and cavities. The rest of the world has seen that fluoride doesn't help much with cavities. There's no difference, fluoridated and non-fluoridated water and cavities. Only the U.S. and parts of New Zealand see otherwise. Every other Western country has stopped adding fluoride to their water supply,
right?
For the most part. But so fluoride and bromide are these toxic halogens that can compete with the essential item iodine, and particularly bromide. On that scale, it's fluoride, chloride, bromide, iodine. Bromide and iodine are next to each other because they're similar weight and similar size. And if you want to pick one halide, one toxic halide that is going to cause the most havoc with iodine, it's going to be bromide, just from its size and its shape and where it's found on the periodic table. And our exposure to bromide has gone through the roof over the last 50, 60 years. And bromide's in food and drink. It's in consumer goods. It's in carpet. It's in curtains. It's in mattresses. It's a fire retardant in consumer goods. It's in these things. It's in, we can't get away from it. And in my testing with Dr. Abraham, it was the bromide iodine interaction that we found is the most significant. We couldn't really demonstrate fluoride competitively inhibiting an iodine. And I think that's because fluoride is such a small molecule size-wise. It's so electronegative, so toxic to the human body, that when we get fluoride in our body, the human body, the lights are flashing and the police are called. They don't like that floating around because that damages so many enzymes in the body. It binds it away tightly into primarily the bones and the teeth. And so it's not such a, I don't think it's as big as competitive inhibitor as bromide is. That's been my experience with it. I did a study, before you say one thing, I did a study which I describe in my iodine book, where I compared 9 breast cancer women. I just picked the first 9 that came in versus 9 women without breast cancer. That was the only thing I separated them from. We did 24-hour urine tests, and we measured iodine from day 0, day 1, and day 30 days. And we measured bromide and fluoride out of that 24-hour urine. What we found was the breast cancer patients, before any therapy, before iodine therapy was given to them, they had 50% lower iodine, 50% higher bromide. And then as we gave them iodine, their bromide levels shot through the roof coming out of the urine because we competitively inhibited it out of the body. They would detox them from it. And their iodine levels gradually came up. And so we couldn't demonstrate that happening with fluoride.
Interesting. Well, both fluoride and bromide are everywhere. I mean, you've got the fluoride, and I just did a podcast on the forever chemicals in all of our products that we're putting on our skin and thinking that it's fine. And I love when women put perfume straight on their thyroid, right? I mean, you're literally poisoning your thyroid. There are a couple things I really want you to explain deeper, the competitive inhibition, because I talk a lot about this, but not everybody is chemistry minded. And the way I describe it is if the iodine isn't there, then you've got these little receptor sites that are open, and all of these other halogens are just going to fit right in there nice and perfectly. And if iodine is there, then those things don't have a place to take hold in the body. Would that be correct?
I think you got a good description going. One way to look at it is that, we have these iodine receptors in our thyroid for a reason. We need to make thyroid hormone. Look, you can't make a hormone in the body without iodine. You can't make adrenal hormone, sex hormone, testicular hormone, any of the other hormones. You need iodine. So in the thyroid, it's very apparent because, T4, or the inactive form of thyroid hormone that is most predominant in the bloodstream, has 4 atoms of iodine attached to thyroglobulin. T3, the active form, has 3 iodine atoms attached to it. Are you going to make thyroid hormone if you don't have these iodine atoms? Now, what's been shown, so for competitive inhibition, what that means is if you're in a low iodine environment, which our entire country is right now, and you're exposed to bromide, those iodine receptors can become brominated. So instead of iodine binding to thyroglobulin and T4, you might have T4 as 4 atoms of bromine. The laboratory testing doesn't differentiate whether those 4 atoms are iodine or bromide. They've done this studies with animals where if they really make them iodine deficient and they give them enough bromide, they'll brominate their thyroid hormone. Now, we don't really know what the benefit of that is.
So I want to stop you for a second and really emphasize this, you guys. Your lab test could be representing bromide and not iodine in that T4. Is that correct?
That is correct. So they've done that study in animals. They did it in rats. And we don't know what the consequence of that is. We don't know if there's benefits. I doubt there's benefits since bromide's a non-essential item and shouldn't be there. And there's iodine receptors here, that's what we were designed. It's our blueprint. But we haven't done the human studies with it. But when you look at the population-wide data of the U.S. and see these iodine levels declining, over 50%, and see our bromide exposure going up at the same time, you can probably hypothesize that that's been happening. And, I think that's occurring at all the glandular tissues. So if there's what's called a radioactive iodine uptake test, and doctors can order the test. I've ordered it on people. I'm really good at palpating the thyroid. When med students come and shadow with me, I have 2 goals for them in 30 days. Number one, the first goal is they will be able to palpate a thyroid within 30 days and be able to get nodules down to 0.3 centimeters or 3 millimeters. Maybe they can't get to the 3 millimeters yet, but they can get the skills down so they can do it, like riding a bike. And the second goal is they will be able to read a study and understand medical statistics, because I'm fairly good at statistics and good at that. And the level of problems with the thyroid architecture are just enormous out there. And the reason they're not being reported is because doctors have lost the skills with these. Doctors don't touch your patients anymore much. They may put a stethoscope on you, and if you're lucky, they'll touch your abdomen. I know doctors that sit behind a desk. They don't touch their patients. They talk to them, get their lab tests, and talk to them. Or, unfortunately, in today's world, our post-pandemic world, doctors are doing all these televisits, and I don't see how you practice good medicine that way. I do telemedicine here and there. I hate it, but I have patients that move away. and they want to keep me as their doctor, and I'll order lab tests and go over it with them. But I try and make them come in once a year to see me, so at least I can use these again. But remember, for iodine deficiency, I'm looking for my pen, which I can't find, so we'll substitute. There it is. So this is a normal architecture of the thyroid gland, or the breasts, or the ovaries, or the prostate, or all the glandular tissue. In iodine deficiency, you get cysts, which if you had good hands, doctors could palpate that. Nodules, they become hard and nodular, hyperplasia, and cancer. And this is occurring, I believe, at probably epidemic rates. It's just because I'm seeing in my practice what I would consider epidemic rates. It's just not being reported because doctors have lost their palpatory skills. So what's happening, I think, is that I got on the weeds there too. But there's a radioactive iodine test, so you can order this test when I feel a nodule. Nodules can be cancerous. They can be hot nodules or cold nodules. So hot nodules can take up iodine, little bits of iodine, make lots of thyroid hormone. These are people that get hyperthyroid, when they eat seafood or they take an iodine supplement. And hyperthyroid is when you get nervous and jittery and palpitations and anxiety. People don't like hyperthyroidism. It's not fun. Hypothyroidism, the other side of that, is everything's underactive. They get cold, tired, brain fog, hair loss, and they can start gaining weight. They don't like that either, but people can tolerate hypothyroid much better than they can tolerate hyperthyroid. So when I give somebody the only way to really diagnose a hot nodule is to order this radionuclide uptake scan. So what happens is you give someone an IV of radioactive iodine and you take a picture of the thyroid gland and you're looking, does a large amount of that radioactivity bind to the thyroid gland, or perhaps is it in one area where this nodule is, and you call that a hot nodule. At that point, if they have that, they can't take iodine. These people, they'll get hyperthyroid right away, and either they get that nodule surgically removed or they just can't take iodine. I've had 3 patients in 30 years. It's not very common, but it does happen. The reason for this long explanation is the normal levels of radioactive iodine. When I inject radioactive iodine in people, or me or a patient, the normal value or the reference range is 12 to 35% of injected radioactive iodine binds to the thyroid. They say that's normal, or that's average for the reference range. Well, if you have enough iodine in your thyroid gland and all the receptors are saturated with iodine, when you get radioactive iodine in, doesn't matter how you get it in. You put an IV in them, or a nuclear power plant blows its top, and radioactive iodine is dispersed into the atmosphere and falls to the ground, and you get exposed that way. If you have enough iodine in your thyroid, in your breasts, your ovaries, uterus, pancreas, prostate, salivary glands, the radioactive iodine has nowhere to bind to. There's no receptors that are free for it. It just passes right through. Right. So really, that radioactive iodine test the normal should be 0%, or the optimal should be 0%. Anything above that, well, they're deficient in iodine. So if 12 to 35% is normal, that means pretty much everybody's iodine deficient. And these people, like you said earlier, if they get exposed to bromide, perhaps with this, or they drink a pop that has brominated vegetable oil, or they, what else? Bread that has brominated flour, or pastry products that have brominated flour, that bromide is going to bind to those empty receptors and potentially brominate that thyroid hormone, or brominate the breasts, or brominate the ovaries. Do we know what the consequences of that are? No, but it ain't good. And, we can talk about a couple case histories if you want, but what I've seen is breast cancer patients notoriously have higher bromide levels, lower iodine levels, and that just repeats itself over and over and over.
We only have 10 minutes, and I feel like we need 4 more hours because there's so much to talk about. I mean, but I live in Southern California, and whenever we have a fire, you have the helicopters dumping bromide, fire retardant, on those fires, and then I'm breathing it in, and I'm sitting here trying to eat my organic food and do all the right things, but I can't control that.
Yeah, think about it. So that's one way. Think about the brominated hot tubs, the brominated pools.
Yeah.
It was bromine, brominated flour. It's in the 1960s and before that, the flour was all iodinated. It was Iodine's used as a conditioning agent to make it soft. And in the early 1970s, right when radioactive iodine use became in vogue in medicine, it shifted from iodinated flour to brominated flour. It's unclear. I can't find an article. I can't find someone saying we should do this, but it was done. And that has accelerated. That's what really accelerated the iodine deficiency epidemic. And, then, like you said, when they're dumping it from the skies, when they're putting it in our water, they're putting it in our pools and our hot tubs, much less our food supply and all our consumer goods. And, the carpet that your feet are on right now, the mattress or the cushion in your chair that your rear end's sitting on right now probably has bromine in it. Your blinds and your curtains and your windows have bromine in it. We can't get away from it. And so therefore, I think that's what's drove down our iodine levels and raised our toxicity levels, and is in large part this whole conflation of things causing the epidemic of breast cancer, ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, thyroid, prostate, pancreas, all those problems.
And not just the cancers, just unexplained weight gain and fatigue and being tired and water retention and hair loss. I'm hearing so many people, men and women, saying, I can't believe it. My hair is just falling out. And it begs the question, with the increased radiation, the increase of the spike protein that we know is affecting the thyroid, with the increase of the GMOs, the glyphosate, the heavy metals, the fluoride and bromide, and then you talked about iodized salt. Well, 36 out of 39 salts tested in a salt study were full of microplastics. So here you are taking salt to try to get some iodine, but you're filling your body with microplastics, another toxin. So we have all of these things hitting us. It begs the question, is there anyone who doesn't need to be supplementing with iodine today?
I'm never a fan of saying everybody needs this. And, but in our modern world and where we are with things, I don't know if everybody needs it, but most people do. And look, as a population level, iodine levels have fallen 50%. Toxic halides have gone up through the roof. Cancer has gone up through the roof. I agree with you. And it doesn't, I've always said, if the government comes to my office, which they've done, and they tell you they don't like what they tell me, they don't like what I'm doing, which they've done. And if they tell me you have to go back to conventional medicine and you can only take one thing holistically with you, you pick, iodine would be the one I'd pick. Iodine gives you the biggest bang for the buck. It's not terribly expensive, and it helps every single cell in the body, every tissue in the body. And I have yet to see a single nutrient work as well as iodine has in my practice.
I would absolutely agree. And I actually had someone question me today saying, Sara, my mom is allergic to iodine, so maybe I shouldn't take it. I don't understand how the body can be allergic to iodine if it is essential for life. It can be allergic to an ingredient in a type of iodine, possibly, but everybody needs iodine for life and for survival. Yeah. So we only have one more minute. So really quickly, because this is a huge myth out there, Hashimoto's. You were misquoted a while back. And can you maybe explain why everyone is so fearful of taking iodine if they have Hashimoto's?
All right. So if you Google me, you'll find a quote where I said, Hashimoto's patient taking iodine is like pouring fuel on the fire. I wasn't misquoted. That's what I said. That was the first 10 years of my practice, and I didn't know about iodine. Once I learned about iodine, I didn't have to recant it. I was ignorant at the time. I wasn't iodine literate at the time. There's a big myth out there that Hashimoto's is caused by iodine, and the myth is out in conventional medicine, and unfortunately, the myth is out there in holistic medicine, particularly in the naturopathic world. And there's some big voices out there who've been saying this for years. However, I can dispel the myth very quickly, and I'll ask you the question, Sara. Over the last 50 years, have iodine levels gone up or down across the United States?
Down.
50% down, according to the NHANES data. over the last 50 years, has Hashimoto's gone up or down?
Significantly up.
One's gone down, one's gone up. This is called a negative association. A negative association disproves causation. That what we just said disproves iodine is causing Hashimoto's. Now we can discuss what causes Hashimoto's, and maybe it's more TVs in the house or more cars in the driveway or something. But my premise has been, Hashimoto's forms from low iodine. Hashimoto's is treated with iodine. I've got case history after case history, including 2 daughters who I treated this way. We had Hashimoto's as young teenagers and do not now as young ladies. And I got patient after patient after patient. So that's just nonsense. I described that in both my thyroid book and my iodine books.
Well, amazing. And I can't believe we're almost out of time. Just to summarize, you guys, I want to make sure you understand the imperative nature of iodine. Increases metabolism, fat oxidation, increases ATP and mitochondrial health, devitalizes viruses. That's all viruses, bacteria, and foreign pathogens. Reduces histamines, and histamines and allergies are through the roof due to the spike protein. It helps with the spike protein symptoms. It helps with depression, brain fog, increasing IQ, and it mobilizes the dangerous linoleic acid and PUFAs that I've been talking about from the cells, strengthens the immune system, and is even helping with blood sugar as well. So I just wanted to make sure everyone understood the imperative nature of this one little molecule. And Dr. Brownstein, I am just so in awe of all of your research and your knowledge on iodine, and we're going to definitely have to have you back to talk about salt, because we didn't even touch on salt except for the microplastic salts, but the importance of salt. And can you tell people where they can find your books and where they can find you?
So they can go to my website, www.drbrownstein.com. Everything's listed on there. And we'll look forward to talking again. Lindsay Berkson, I think, referred us together, right?
Well, no, but Amy Horniman
right.
is a friend of mine, and she is the one that is friends with Lindsay.
So Dr. Lindsay Berkson, I got indirectly to you. Her and I are doing a 16-hour CME course on all this stuff. And I'm talking about iodine and thyroid problems and talking about all the hormones of the body. And, you cannot have a healthy hormonal system without adequate amounts of iodine. This 30-year journey has been pretty cool, and it's, I'm still learning and still have an open mind with things, and, still figuring out what holistic medicine is. And, I want to keep going, hopefully another 30 years.
Absolutely. And this world is giving us more challenges to overcome as we continue on. So I'm super excited to continue the conversation with you. Everyone, check out Dr. Brownstein's books. Amazing. And he's covering it all. So thank you. And thanks everyone else for joining me today. If you need my help, you can feel free to reach out to me at sarabantahealth.com, here to help, and join my free group coaching on Telegram. There's no downside. I share daily tips and tools to improve your health, surrounded by a community of people who are on a similar path, and you'll gain that amazing daily motivation and insight. And you'll have all of these aha moments going, oh my gosh, that's what it is. Don't forget to follow me on social media at Accelerated Health Products, and you can catch this podcast on over 100 platforms, including Spotify, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. Just search Accelerated Health TV and Radio Show. I'm on a mission, and I need your help to share my message of healing with everyone who's ready to listen. So share this podcast with a few of your friends who may need my help. And be sure to visit my website to get 10% off your first order with Welcome 10. Thanks again for joining us here, and have a great week.